Hello, everybody. This is the Earful Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. Today, you're going to hear from Celine Flores from the private concierge service, Celine Concierge, and we're going to be talking about the 5 golden rules to moving to Paris. This also works to moving to France, and it also will work if you're just interested in the French culture and the Parisian way of life, because we talk a lot about it. This show is brought to you by My Private Paris. You'll hear from Marie at the end, talking specifically about the Pompidou Center, which is about to close. More on that at the end. First, it's Celine Flores talking about the 5 golden rules to moving to Paris. Here's some music from Press Maxim. Celine, welcome to the studio. How you doing?
Doing wonderful.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad to have you in here, not least because we're going to talk about something that could help a lot of people, helping people move to Paris. But before all that, I just want to check how's everything going with you. I know you've been here for, is it 11 years now?
Yes, 11 years and counting.
Yeah. Did you ever imagine it would be 11 years?
Sort of. When I first moved to Paris, I was like, I'm here for the long term.
Really?
And since moving here, I've actually obtained my French citizenship.
Okay, you did it.
Yeah, like 3 years ago.
Do you know what? Do you know what the sheer admin of doing it puts me off? That's my biggest. How long did it take?
It took like a year or a year and a half to gather the paperwork.
Imagine that, a year and a half to gather the paperwork.
Yeah. And you have to live on the territoire français for at least 5 years before you can even apply. And I gathered all my documents. I qualified at that point after being here 5 years. And then I applied at the end of 2018. And it took like 3 years actually to get a response. It was like it all happened right before COVID.
Right.
And so my dossier got delayed like years. So I was on, at the time, a 4-year residence permit. And I was like, this is the perfect time. I'm going to do it. By the time I get my answer, hopefully it'll be positive that I'm French. But I almost expired my 4-year work permit before I got a response.
Right. And how did it feel to get that citizenship? Did something change immediately?
Yeah, I cried. I was like, wow, all the hard work.
Really?
All the years put into living here and just loving this country. I felt it was a privilege, obviously, but I felt like, wow, they love me back.
Really?
Finally.
How interesting. Did you feel a little bit French as well?
Yeah, no, I have felt French from the beginning.
Really? Did you do something special to mark it?
To what?
To mark the occasion, did you go to a Edith Piaf sing along or something like that? I don't know.
Just the classic, pop a bottle of champagne,
Right.
have friends over, and celebrate. And
well, congratulations! I think that's brilliant. In terms of what we're going to talk about today, we got the 5 golden rules, carefully scripted for moving specifically to Paris. Although I assume this kind of works for France as well. A little bit about yourself. Celine Concierge, what is that?
Celine Concierge is my business that I run here in Paris, and we provide help, and we help save time for people who are coming to visit or live here. We are sort of the personal assistants for people who want to come and they don't know where to get started. We help them, we advise, and we guide them along. We kind of hold their hands along their Paris journey. Professional
handholders. Yes. For the Francophiles who want to become French.
Exactly.
Or who at least want to live here.
Yes.
There you go. And
all of the above.
Where are you from in the States, by the way?
From Texas.
From Texas? Where in Texas?
A little bit of all over.
Uh-huh.
I've lived in at least 4 cities. I was born and raised in El Paso. I lived in San Antonio, Fort Worth, and then I went to school in Austin.
So the big ones. I drove, this is a story maybe for another time, but I drove right across Texas once. And everyone told me it's such a big state, it's going to take forever. And so I was so daunted by that idea that I went as quickly as I could, kind of, as in not stopping very much. Did it in a day. was like, it's not that big.
It's the size of France. Bigger than France.
I just kind of expected, I don't know, I just kind of expected it would have taken like 6 weeks to get through the desert or something like that. I don't know. Okay, I totally had that one wrong. But we're not here to talk about Texas.
Where did you drive from and to?
From the bottom right to like going towards, what's that town? Roswell in New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
Because
okay.
my brother loves all that stuff. And I was like, I'll visit for him. And I thought that would take days to get there. And I did it in like maybe 2 days or something. But all the back roads, it was great. I loved it. I met so many interesting people over there in the whole country. But anyway, back to France. Yes. Golden rules, you got 5 of them. What I think is I'll read these unusual headlines and you'll explain them to me. And then the idea being anyone who's thinking of moving to this wonderful city or country will feel that they're on the right track, okay? And even people listening who don't have any intention of moving here, I think this will elucidate some of the mysteries of this country because, I mean, this speaks a lot about French people and the system as well. So the first one, you got the first golden rule for moving to Paris is to pre-visit as a local.
Yes.
So not just a quick trip up the Eiffel Tower over the weekend. This is a bit more serious than that.
Yeah, so the idea is that France is beautiful. Paris is a wonderful city to visit, but it's so different when you're a tourist versus living here and you're a local and you've like spent time and you've put roots down. So this golden rule is to come and before you make the big move and you start setting roots down, come and visit like a pre-visit and kind of scope it out and see what it would feel like to live on a Parisian street and in a Parisian building.
Right, so not stay in a hotel necessarily.
Exactly.
Right.
Go down to your local coffee shop or your boulangerie and grab a baguette. What does that feel like to walk into a shop and you're not speaking English or you're not speaking your native language? You're having to adjust to the local culture and language here.
Avoid all the tourists. Don't do the touristy things.
Yes.
Go full and what, like stay in the same area you want to live, or it's not so important?
Maybe that would be helpful if you have a particular neighborhood that you love in Paris. Sometimes it's good to also explore other arrondissements because they could also surprise you. I think a lot of tourists come and they have like their top 5 like neighborhoods, but there's a lot going on actually in other neighborhoods and districts of Paris too that.
Do you think visiting Paris like a local and visiting like a tourist are really that different?
I think so. Yeah, because when you're here as a tourist, there's a kind of that end period where you're like, okay, I'm here for 2 or 3 days. I'm going to do like all these things. You're kind of on a timeline. But when you come as a local, your time is different. Time seems to slow down. Sometimes it seems to speed up because Paris is a fast-paced city. But I would say it is.
Yeah. And then the idea being like you do sort of like live more like a local, go to the supermarket rather than the restaurant, take the metros and the buses and actually live it. How long should this pre-visit go for?
As long as you can. I would say at least more than 2 weeks because like you mentioned supermarkets, you're going to have to go down to a supermarket and carry your groceries up like 5 flights of stairs if you don't have an elevator.
True, that's an interesting thing. So the idea of doing like the week's shopping at the market or something is something that tourists never do.
Yes, and doing those kind of mundane things, like what does that feel like going to a post office when you have to...
Spoiler alert, bad. Post office is my least favorite place.
No, the key is to go in the... After 2 p.m., it's quiet. And then you have like the...
Yeah.
The...
Why is it quiet after 2 p.m. then?
There's like a rush in the morning and then a rush right before the post office closes. And then there's like this golden window.
I wish someone told me 10 years ago about the golden window of the post office.
Yeah, I know. I've gone like so many times that I've like figured it out. I'm like, I go at 2 p.m. I'm like, wow, there's no one here.
It's interesting.
Awesome.
It is cool because then you also like the time of the day. Like I remember when I first moved here, seeing like going for a coffee before my work when I used to have a 9-to-5 job and seeing the city wake up or now I've got children and taking them to school and seeing the way the city actually moves different to when if you're here on holiday and you maybe sleep in or you just want to get early to the Louvre or whatever. It's a very different vibe. I get it. Okay, pre-visit as a local, golden rule number 1. Number 2, anticipate the paper. The
Yes.
dreaded paper.
Oh boy, France is notorious for its paperwork, its red tape. Things go wrong all the time with French bureaucracy, and you have to anticipate and just know that going in.
Yeah.
Something's going to go wrong with your dossier. Your dossier is this famous, this very popular like file. You know, you have to have a dossier for everything, for getting an apartment, for applying for school, for applying for a job. Even they may ask you for like things beyond your CV. And in France, they love their dossiers. They love paperwork.
I think, in all sincerity, I think that the paperwork here is worse than its reputation is. Like, I think it's even worse. I think people just don't like talking about it. I think it's worse. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows it's bad. I think it's worse.
It is. Like,
Is that fair?
Why is it? I think part of it too is that things are not digitized yet. Like we're kind of going there, we're getting there.
True.
But things have been done a certain way so long in France that they're like, no, c'est comme ça.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
You know, when my daughter was born, I said there's so much paperwork with a birth, like so much. And I said to one of the nurses, as they were printing out the 60th piece of paper, I said, don't you think, though, that it would be better all this online, right? And she goes, no. We had a cyber attack here recently, so I don't think we will, like, I don't have any intention of this stuff being online. And I was like, no, that can't be the right. But I get the fear, but there's not even a will from some people to embrace it, you know? So we could be stuck with it for a while.
Yeah, but France is also one of the top countries for developers. So there's like, there's got to be security. I mean, it's kind of a dumb
change.
excuse.
But so anticipate what? Is it just get your headspace ready for this being part of it?
This being part of your journey living in France, you cannot escape the paperwork. You have to embrace it, and you have to embrace problems, things going wrong, papers getting lost, or you have to anticipate that you may not always have everything in check. You have to kind of also have grace with yourself that when things go wrong, kind of have to laugh it off. You have to have humor with dealing with the French bureaucracy because otherwise you're just it's gonna be detrimental for you.
And it certainly helps to expect the worst, basically. Expect that something's going to be missing because, you know, it just makes it so much more bearable. It's such a big part of life here. I think it's probably the thing I struggle with the most. In all seriousness, I think I don't think I'm a very organized person, and this is a country where with paperwork you have to be very organized. So I agree with you. Anticipate, be ready for it. At least, even if you're not organized, being ready for it will help, right? Yeah.
Keeping all your documents is super important.
You know the French people, have you noticed French people keep the boxes that things come in? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, like
what your shoes come
box?
in. Yeah, or what your laptop comes in or something like that. I didn't realize this was a thing until really recently. And I said it to a French person. She's like, yeah, I've kept every box that everything's ever came in. And she gave us something for her kid had grown out of something and gave it with the box that it came in. I was like, this must be like 4 years old. She's like, I keep everything.
How do Parisians have room to keep all the boxes?
This is what I don't understand.
The tiny apartment.
Maybe it's just a couple of people that I happen to have talked to, but this is something we've got to investigate. But maybe it goes deeper. Rule number 3, golden rule number 3, prevent the housing catch-22.
Ooh.
What's the housing catch-22?
Okay, I don't know if it's preventable, but you can be ready for it.
Yeah.
So the housing catch-22 is basically it's like this cycle of things that you need in order to apply and get an apartment in Paris. You have to have a bank account. You have to have tax receipts or tax documents. You have to, in order to have the bank account, you have to have a place to live already. And so when you're coming into Paris as a newbie, you like don't have a place to live. So you kind of have to hack the system too. One of my tips for that would be if you have friends, if you're ever so lucky to have friends, use their address as your like home base to start getting you set up for these paperwork, the journey of you like living and establishing yourself here, because you need one address that basically shows that you're like legitimate here.
So you need an address to have a bank account. You need a bank account to have an address. You need both to get a job.
Yes, and then you need, again, those dossiers. You need like a dossier for the bank. You need a dossier for your apartment. And that's like a whole other monster.
And the weird thing is, it always seems to work out. How does that happen? Because I remember having this 10 years ago. It always seems to work out because you never really hear about people that had to go back to America or Australia because they just couldn't.
It's, again, I think the thing is with France is that there's so many rules in place that at some point people just break them all the time.
Yeah.
There's kind of just like this unspoken rule of like breaking the rules.
Yeah.
So, like I said, just you have to find a way to hack the
So
system.
loopholes. The more rules there are, the more loopholes there are, basically. And is this essentially all this that we're saying? This is stuff that you help with your company, right? So people that are trying to figure out these catch-22s and stuff. That's what you and your team is.
Yes.
Okay.
We help them. We help take the stress out of and the guesswork out of how to establish life here.
You must have the patience of a saint. Is that how you test new employees? Is like you test their patience somehow? You have them in a waiting room for like 45 minutes and you're just looking through the window? That would be a good one.
Yeah, we test them. Actually, we kind of say like there's a training period, but at the same time, they get tested by baptism through fire.
Yeah.
Like we just have to give them missions and we're like, great, you succeeded. Wonderful.
Just like moving to Paris, really, baptism of fire. Which brings us to the fourth golden rule, which is be prepared to fit in. Be prepared to fit into this country. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when you move abroad away from your native land, you have to just come in knowing that you're going to be different. But it doesn't mean that you cannot integrate. I think you're encouraged to integrate, right? To learn the language, to find community. And I think when French people see that you're not making an effort, that you're not speaking French, they will kind of, there's like an attitude, a negative attitude against that. So I think when you like meet people, locals, you know, at a restaurant or in a bar or something, and they see that you're making an effort and you like could maybe have like French colleagues and you want like are generally interested in them. I think that's all part of the experience of moving here is that you don't want to be isolated. And yeah, part of that is like fitting in. And that could look like in so many different ways for people.
Because you hear these stories about people who kind of purposely don't fit in, who are like, I will be myself. I will continue to be a foreigner here. And do you think that just doesn't work? I think, yeah, people can do that, but they don't thrive here. Yeah.
I think if you really want to thrive here, there has to be some kind of openness of heart where you want to learn the culture. There's so many different cultural norms here, especially if you're coming from like maybe Australia or the US. The culture is very capitalistic and there's like a private life versus in France, there's everything socialist. So you have to be like ready for this socialist life of kind of sharing everything. And that's
when you mean saying sharing everything, you mean essentially money. I mean, we're not sharing what, we're talking about everybody pays taxes. It goes towards.
And France is one of the most heavily taxed country, but that is for a more common goal of like the country, right? And so the country in and of itself is based on this foundation of socialist norms of like, we're going to have, free private health, we're going to have free public healthcare and free public schooling for everybody. So there's this community of sharing more, I think. It's less individualistic than it is in other countries.
Is that something that Americans that are here struggle with? Or is it something that you guys kind of embrace when you come over here? Because I know, and obviously we're not going to get into a whole healthcare in America versus healthcare in France thing, but I mean, some Americans I know will talk about this a lot, the differences between, healthcare and stuff like that. Is that a huge conversation point in taxes and stuff when Americans get together?
Yeah.
Yeah? What's the general vibe? Are you all like...
We hate it. We hate paying taxes. I mean, I think everyone just hates paying taxes, but I don't, it's hard to say because I've lived my whole adult life in France.
Yeah.
So I'd never really pay taxes in the US, but I can say that. What was your question? Sorry.
No. I think no.
There's
It's a tough question, but it's. I know exactly what you mean because I've spent most of my adult life in Paris, and the taxes are very high. But you get, I've also never had children in other countries, or I've never had full-time jobs really in other countries. I've never started a company in other countries. So when you see the tax here, it seems higher, but then you also I've got nothing to really compare it to. But I know that a lot of expats that talk about this kind of stuff find it quite daunting and difficult, especially starting companies. But in terms of blending in, like if you talk to French people and say, oh, the taxes are high, typically they're going to be like, well, that's how it is here. This is so in terms of, your point, if you want to blend in, it's accepted and don't complain too much about it.
You have to embrace a lot of things, I think, in order to successfully have a life here that is comfortable for you. But on the flip side of that, people coming from places like the U.S. that there is no public healthcare. I mean, coming here and you go to the hospital. I went to the hospital once. It was like 19 euros. I'm like, wait, what? Are you serious?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a privilege and a blessing, but at the same time, I am paying for it because of all my cotisation, all the social charges and the taxes.
Yeah, so it's kind of counterintuitive to think about it. Our daughter was born a couple of months ago. It cost 450 euros for everything. And the majority of that was the bed that I stayed in and that my wife stayed in, as in sleepover, like hotel fee, basically.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
It's like paying for a hotel.
Yeah. Anyhow, in terms of the culture that you touched on there, I've noticed in my personal life because I like French music, for example, and French movies, and when I reference something or quote like a song lyric and a French person hears it, it's like you go up 8. You're so much more impressive to them because you've embraced part of their culture. It's so I assume this goes for every country when you move there, but I've noticed way more than when I lived in Sweden that people love when you make that effort with the culture, because that kind of culture, especially film, literature, that kind of stuff is so important here.
Yeah, it's so ingrained in the French people, like art and film and music. And
there's a lot of pride. That's a good hack. Learn some lyrics. And quote them.
Yes.
This flows nicely into the fifth one. This is a strict one, I think. You got to learn French, or at least try.
Yeah. I think, again, it's just like moving to another country. It's kind of what you make it. And if you move here not wanting to learn the language, then you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Because obviously, and coming from an English-speaking country, that's already a roadblock for you.
Yep.
But if you have an open heart, if you at least try to speak it or try to understand, you're on a path set up for success. Even if you're not good at it, it takes a long time to learn French. It's a hard language. And as long as you're trying, as long as you're motivated to, I think your experience will be so much more enjoyable than if you're like closed off to it. And it can be a scary experience learning another language.
Any tips? You speak like fluent French, huh?
Yes, my French is pretty good, but it's not perfect. I still make a lot of mistakes all the time, and have people help correcting me. I'm always asking what the right way to say it is. But a tip for learning, I would say, watch a lot of series or French cinema if you can, with French subtitles, because that you are connecting the two in your brain. That's one of the ways I learn. Also French music, and then looking at the lyrics.
It's like that's a double whammy, because then you're learning the culture as well.
Yeah.
Like when you drop that you've watched the latest episode of whatever, or the newest movie or whatever, it's such a good in for talking to French people. Especially if you find something that you really want to watch. Like there's some really good, unfortunately some of the best TV series in French have some of the fastest French speaking. You know what I mean? Like some of the ones, or complicated, what was that one?
Call My Agent?
No. That was what I was first going to say, which I love. And there's some of the characters in there that just talk so fast that
they talk with such a colloquial language. It's like very French. Like that's the way my husband speaks.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what are you saying? Like, I've never heard this, but yeah.
But I think, and the problem here, you live here, if you get that on Netflix, Call My Agent, you can only watch it with French subtitles. You don't have the option of putting it into English as well, which is so frustrating because I want to get some of those jokes. There's another one I can't remember the name of, but a spy, can't remember the name of it, a spy thriller, but I'll put it in the show notes when I remember. But some of the best French TV shows I've seen are also the hardest to understand. It's unfair, but you got to learn French. I agree with you 100%. Time is ticking away, as it always does, very quickly, or at least seemingly very quickly. And we've got through our list. I wonder if you want to add anything about how people can best find you and employ your services. Where are you?
Sure. I am... people can find us on Instagram very easily.
YouTube as well, by the way. What's going on here?
Yeah.
There's a guy filming to my left.
Hi, Harry. Yeah, we are documenting this year because it's been an important year for us with the Olympics coming to Paris. That was very special, once-in-a-lifetime experience. So we didn't want to miss out on showcasing that. And so, yeah, people can find us. We're on YouTube, Instagram. Celine Concierge is the name of my company.
CelineConcierge.com is where you want to begin. And so you will, for people, not just for people who are looking to move to Paris, you do a lot more than that, but especially helping people who want to embrace this country, culture, city, and beyond. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Yes. And yeah, we really help people who want to come here and make France their home.
Cool. Well, lovely chatting with you. Thanks for sharing the 5 golden rules. And for the people listening to this episode wanting to watch it, you can find it on YouTube. Not just that, go and check out Celine Concierge's YouTube because they'll be behind the scenes of this very day where Celine and I are walking around drinking coffee in one of my favorite coffee shops. Will I reveal the name of it? How about this? Go and watch her YouTube video and you'll see where it is. And yeah, good luck for everyone thinking to move to Paris, and good luck to you, Celine. Thanks for coming in the studio.
Perfect. And yeah, if people have questions or are curious about more about life here, then I think they should comment on the podcast or on the YouTube.
I love it. There's a call to action, guys. Put a comment, leave a question. Celine will happily jump in and answer. So once again, Celine, thanks for coming in, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Marie Segura, ça va?
Bonjour, oui, ça va.
We're going to do it en français aujourd'hui.
Okay.
No, I'm nervous. I want to talk about something specific. Now is the best time to see the Pompidou Center.
Yes.
Or in 2026.
And no, not
Well,
even.
it will be better then, surely.
No, 2031.
Oh my gosh, it's even longer than I thought. Okay.
It's 5 years, yeah.
There might be people there going, what's Pompidou? What is this weird word? Wasn't that a president?
Yes, it was. We do have a center right in the middle of Paris that is more known as a modern art museum, but we are every Parisian is calling it Pompidou Museum because it was built, during the time of this president in the 70s.
When I first moved to Paris, and the lady who was showing me around my new apartment, she said, you can see Pompidou out the window. I remember I didn't know what that was. And I remember just looking out the window and seeing a million rooftops and being like, wow, I wonder what a Pompidou is. I'm sure it's there somewhere.
But it is probably the weirdest building we have in Paris.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they love it for its originality. And it's full of color and you have pipes. It just doesn't look like Parisian buildings, so I think that's why people love it.
Well, I think everything that's ever been built new in Paris, people hated at first.
Of course.
Everything.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Like the Louvre pyramids, the Eiffel Tower, the Tour Montparnasse, the Pompidou Center.
We like the things the way they are, and then
give it 10 years.
Exactly, 10 years after, we're like, oh no, we actually preferred it new.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be probably the same way. I mean, the Olympics were the same. Remember,
That's
before
true.
the Olympics, people
That's
thought
true.
we don't want it, and now it's all good. So,
people don't know what they want in this city, I think. But one thing that is for sure is that people should go and see this museum today.
Yes.
Why? What's going on?
Well, Pompidou is known for his beautiful collection of modern art. So you have the Matisse, you have Picasso's, you have Chagall, so many different artists that are on display there. Of course, the collection will be probably, on display in other museums now that is going to be closed for 5 years. So it's going to be maybe a little bit in France, a little bit in US. We'll see where all the collections going. But for sure, if you have the time to go now, it's better.
Do you know what they're actually doing? Like, is it just...
It's a huge renovation from, the entire building, inside the entire building is made. Do you remember Carnavalet Museum? It was the same thing, 5 years. Yeah. Picasso, 5 years. So it's always a 5-year renovation plan.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember the Carnavalet because it closed right when I started this podcast. And everyone I'd say, tell me a museum you recommended. They always said Carnavalet. I was like, I've not been. I was so hungry to go to it. But I don't know if Pompidou has that same... Do people love it?
You're right. I mean, I would say that maybe we can ask, the people who are listening right now, like if they be enjoying the museum. It's true that I think it's more Parisian or French crowd that is going there. Yeah. It's not as known as the Met in New York, so that's probably why. But I would say that it would be too bad to miss it just for the view. I mean, if not for the art, for the view, because you're in the center of Paris, you can see everything from there. Yep. You have this nice restaurant also on the top of it. So there's so many reasons to go.
That view alone, can you get up there for free to that viewpoint, or do you have to buy a ticket?
That's a good question. If you do have a reservation at the restaurant, I would say that you can go there. Yeah. If you have a ticket, of course. I never tried without a ticket.
That's the story of my life is trying to get in for free.
That's a good question. I love it.
But the view is incredible. You go up that sort of exterior escalator, and then it's just central Paris from the center. Amazing.
And the fact that it's an escalator, also, you have the sensation that you're really... you're just floating, more and more above Paris. And
is there a piece in there that's famous, like the Mona Lisa in the Louvre? Is there something that people are drawn to?
We do have multiple pieces that will, for the people that will be important. I'm thinking about the Delaunay, that is the Eiffel Tower in very various colors. I'm thinking about this one. There is Mondrian also, that could be quite known. And there is this various blue, the blue monochromes from Yves Klein.
Yeah.
So, so many different. I don't know if there is one, but there is multiple for the people who
It feels like they need that when they reopen. They need to have a Mona Lisa
iconic
thing.
one.
Yeah.
But they do, what they do instead? They have those exhibitions, temporary exhibitions that are always amazing about one very famous artist. So maybe that's how they are also balancing the fact that, they don't have like one piece that is standing out.
You need a standout piece if you've got a weird name as a museum. That's one of the general rules, I think. But so they're closing in the start of
2025.
Okay.
Yes, they're starting to remove the pieces in October 24, and it's going to be for 5 years. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. If you like modern art, get in there quickly. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long wait. The Pompidou Museum. If you want to see museums and a lot more of Paris, get in touch with My Private Paris. There's links in the show notes. Thank you, Marie, for coming in.
Thank you.